Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button now. In today's video, I am going to be ranking all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies from worst to best. Now, this is just my take on these movies, and this is how I personally would rank them. I recently reviewed every single Nightmare movie on this channel, so if you haven't seen them yet, then there is a playlist on the channel for you to go and binge watch. So I thought it was only fitting that I concluded with my own Freddy rankings. So starting this list off at number 9, and it is Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. This movie for me is literally the worst movie in this entry. When I rewatched it recently to refresh my memory for the movie review, I had actually forgotten how bad this movie was. It's the movie that literally turned Freddy into an absolute joke. I didn't like any of the characters apart from maybe Tracy. The movie as a whole is a total bore fest, but the second half of this movie is even worse than the first half, if that's even possible. The great finale of this final battle with Freddy was a total letdown. Now, one of my subscribers, Karen, left a comment saying that they concentrated on the 3D effects on this movie, which is why this storyline is so terrible, and I just have to totally agree with you, Karen. This is a poor excuse of a Freddy movie, and I really hope I never have to rewatch this movie again. Coming in at number 8, and it's A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. Now, this movie really does frustrate me. It could have been a really good movie, maybe if they'd left out some of the cheesier moments of Freddy. This movie does have a great kill scene when Dan is literally cooked from the inside by fuel injection. But apart from that, this movie doesn't do much else for me. It's not a Freddy movie that I often go back and rewatch as much as the others that you're gonna see on this list, but at least it's a little bit rewatchable from time to time, unlike Freddy's Dead. At number 7, and it's the 2010 remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, what lets this movie down for me is the overuse of CGI effects. When you look at the original Nightmare movie, they were so creative in their effects, and it turned it into a Nightmare classic, and this remake just doesn't do any of that. It doesn't even come close. I think this version of Freddy isn't as bad as people make out. I just didn't like the CGI makeup that they used on this Freddy. Nancy's character is a huge letdown for me. I cannot stand her character in this movie, and I find this movie a little bit of a bore fest. I rewatched it with my other half a few months ago as he had never seen it before, and he thought it was okay. Take away a few of the bad points and it is an okay movie. However, we don't want an okay movie. That is not what the Elm Street movies are all about. So that's why this one is now at my number 7 spot. Number 6 now, and it is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. Now, this isn't at all a bad movie. I think it's a lot better than the ones that I've just been speaking about. I have a lot of fun with this movie. It is the movie that turns Freddy a little bit too much of a comedian, but they don't go too far with it, and it doesn't make you cringe in this movie. There are some fantastic death scenes, and the only thing that lets it down for me is the fact that they kill off the 3 remaining main characters from Nightmare 3. They could have at least kept one of them until the final act, but as it stands, all 3 of them get killed off in the first 10 to 12 minutes. I also loved Freddy's demise in this one, where the souls of the children are ripping themselves out of Freddy's body. I thought it was great, it was different, and it was totally messed up. I definitely go back and rewatch this one a lot more than the previous films that I've talked about. At number 5, and it is Freddy vs. Jason. Now, some of you might have thought that maybe this would be higher up on my list today, but For me, it sits just about right at this spot. I do love this movie. I think it's a classic. I like the characters, there is some brutal kills, and the final battle between Freddy and Jason is outstanding, but this movie doesn't scare me. Once again, this is more of a fun splatter film, which is totally fine. It works really, really well. I just prefer my Freddy films to be proper scary, and I like my Freddy to be proper dark and evil, which is why this one is at number 5 today. I've rewatched this movie countless times and I never get bored. At number 4, and it is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Now, this one might be a controversial spot on this list because I think a lot of people aren't a fan of this sequel. I do know that this film has developed quite a cult following over the years, but I still often see this one a lot lower in people's lists on YouTube. I like this movie because this is one of those Freddy films where Freddy is at his most darkest. I watched this movie when I was quite young, and the opening scene with the bus roaring off into the desert scared the crap out of me. And even to this very day, that roaring sound that comes out of the bus still gives me chills. I think they do a great job with this one in making Freddy dark and scary. There's a brilliant scene where Freddy comes out of Jesse's body, which I think is quite disturbing even by today's standards, and I love it. One of the gripes that I personally have with this one is that it's only Jesse who is having the nightmares. His friends, they don't have any nightmares in this movie. It's more of a possession film where Freddy wants to possess Jesse's body and use Jesse's body to kill the kids on Elm Street, which it is an interesting concept, but I am more of a fan of seeing multiple nightmares from different characters, but I do appreciate what they tried to do. I even love the underlying gay elements that we've got going on between Jesse and his friend Grady. The music is also very chilling in this movie, and that's why it's much higher up on this list than the others. Into the top 3 now, and at number 3 is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, I know some people aren't a huge fan of this one, but I absolutely love it. It's probably because Heather Langenkamp is back, and I am a huge fan of hers. I love how dramatic this movie becomes as soon as Freddy starts putting in an appearance. It's a very unique movie because this movie is about Freddy entering the actors and the actresses' world, and the only way to stop him is to make another Freddy movie. There are some memorable moments with Judy's death and then Dylan nearly being eaten alive and swallowed by Freddy, and Freddy's glove coming out of Nancy's bed. I think it's great, and there are a lot of callbacks to the original. At number 2, and it is the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the first movie that kicked all of this off. What can I say apart from this movie is an absolute classic. Freddy is dark, twisted, and evil in this movie, and he takes no prisoners. And Freddy is indeed scary. Now, some of the nightmares and kill scenes, they actually made you afraid of like everyday household items, like when Glenn gets pulled into the bed, or when Freddy jumps out of the mirror. I love stuff like that. That's what made me afraid of the nightmare movies as a kid growing up. I like how everything in this movie happens on Elm Street, and you kind of feel like it's all happening on this one street, and it's happening to the neighbors, and it keeps things original and memorable. Nancy is of course the final girl, and she does an amazing job. Tina being dragged around the room is a scene that every single one of us remembers after watching this movie. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've gone back and rewatched this movie. It never gets old for me. He quite often gets put on during the Halloween month, and it's an absolute classic that I will never ever get bored of, and I highly recommend getting this on Blu-ray because the movie is so enhanced on the Blu-ray disc, and it's actually a fantastic experience. And at my number 1 spot is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Now, I do think it's quite rare that a sequel becomes the number 1 spot over the original, but for me, Dream Warriors is an absolutely outstanding sequel, and it is my all-time favourite Freddy film. Once again, Heather Langenkamp is back to play Nancy, and this one is set in a mental home where all of the teenagers are experiencing the same Freddy nightmares. It's put together so well, even from the opening nightmare scene with Kristen running through Freddy's house and then the little girl that she's holding, she turns into a rotting corpse. It literally just sets the scene up for the rest of the movie. It's creative, it has the best group of characters, Freddy is still scary, the whole atmosphere of this movie is just the best, and of course, we get the giant Freddy snake, which I think needs to come back in a future movie if they ever do one. I have probably literally watched this movie over 100 times. Not that I'm counting or anything, but honestly, from when I first watched this as a proper youngster, probably like about 9 or 10 years old, to now being 35 years old at the time of me making this video, I can guarantee I have watched this movie the most times out of any of the Elm Street movies. An absolute classic, and they really smashed it out of the park with this one, and this deserves to be at number 1. And that was my Nightmare on Elm Street ranking. So guys, what do you think of my list? Do you agree with anything that I've brought up in this video, or would you rank certain parts differently? Let me know all of your thoughts, and let me know which is your favourite Elm Street movie. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box below. Okay then, thank you all for stopping by today. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, stay safe, and I will see you all again very, very soon.